Now, I don't know about you, but I can recall pretty much half of my junior medical career was spent taking radiology request forms down to the department to hopefully get them approved and get some sort of imaging performed. But the number of times I used to go down there, I'd walk around, the corridors seemed deserted, I couldn't find anyone to speak to. I'd go to the reporting room where I was supposed to find the person that I was meant to talk to. Nobody was in there, and then I'd kind of circle around the department a few more times like a lost little puppy. And I would kind of eventually give up, kind of thinking, where are these guys? You know, I'm in their house, I can't find anyone. Like, are they on lunch break? Are they on coffee break? Did they not come into work today? I don't know. And then kind of just like after 5 to 10 minutes, I'd kind of just walk off and be like, I guess I'll try again later. But guys, I'm here to reassure you that the radiologists are performing work during the day. And in today's video, I'm going to tell you exactly what's involved in a typical radiologist's day. What's going on, guys? Jazz here and welcome to the video. So as I was mentioning before, in today's video I'm going to run through a typical day, which starts from me kind of waking up and then etc. like throughout the day, and kind of give you a bit of an idea of what the typical day involves. Now, for me, I'll run through what it was like as a registrar, so as a training radiologist, and then now what it's like for me working in private practice as a consultant. So first I'll go through my typical day as a consultant, or what I'm doing at the moment. And generally my day will start between 8:30 to 9 o'clock, which is pretty sweet. So normally I'll get to work, first things first, coffee. So I'll grab my coffee on the way to work. The good thing is around where my practice is, a lot of good cafes, so there's never any shortage of good caffeine. Then I'll usually head into the practice, and usually the techs, sonographers, radiographers and everything have generally got work underway. So by the time I've logged into the computer, there's usually a few studies already on the reporting list, which is good. So that's the next thing, so we crack on with the reporting. So majority of the day, as you could imagine, as a radiologist, is reporting studies. So whether that's, x-rays, ultrasounds, MRIs, CTs, that's typically the modalities we do. In private, we don't really do much, we don't do any fluoroscopy at my practice, which is fine by me. Private practice is quite busy, so there's usually multiple sonographers, CT radiographer, MRI radiographer, and then a radiographer is also doing x-rays, scanning kind of non-stop throughout business hours, and you're the only radiologist, so you've got to keep on top of that list, and the volume's quite high in private practice. So usually I will keep reporting throughout the entire day. I wouldn't say there's a designated lunch break. A lot of the time, usually around 12:30 to 1, I'll usually head out and grab something to eat. I'm poorly planned with my meals, so I usually am running late in the morning and don't have time to make lunch, and I will usually just buy something to eat. So like I said, again, like the coffee thing, there's a lot of cafes and stuff nearby, so I usually don't want to eat anything too heavy because I fall asleep in the afternoon, which is not good and frowned upon, so I usually just eat a sandwich. And eating is usually at my desk kind of while reporting at the same time, because like I said, you're the only radiologist, you've got to complete the entire volume that's scanned at the practice during that day. And the last thing you want is kind of staying back hours to clear up the list. So I've managed to, eat my sandwich while reporting at the same time, and then kind of just plug on with the reporting. The other thing is also throughout the day, there's procedures. Now procedures, there's no fixed time. They're all kind of just scattered out throughout the day, all the bookings. So that's predominantly ultrasound guided procedures. So a lot of injections, steroid injections, whether into joints, bursae, tendons, etc. That's the most common procedures that we do, and then on top of that we'll also do CT guided procedures as well, and those are most commonly spinal injections, whether it's a nerve root injection, facet joint injection, or an epidural injection, that being the most common CT guided procedures that we do. So they're kind of scattered out throughout the day. So, I do get up to stretch my legs every now and again to walk up to do a procedure. normally usually do up to about 10 or so procedures per day, which is quite good. A bit of variety, which is always welcomed. So then, in between that, I'll be reporting, I'll get up, go to a procedure, then come back and continue reporting, so on, so on. And then usually that's pretty much the entire day. And I'll keep doing that till about 5 o'clock. So the hours are pretty good. So usually 8:30 to 5, and then usually that's it. So at 5 o'clock, I'll hopefully have all my reporting done in time, and then I can leave on time. The odd instance, sometimes there'll be some scans or something that might go on a bit longer, and then I'll just hang back just to make sure they're reported before I leave. So the turnover is pretty quick, and I think the referrers are pretty happy about that. So now I'll go through what a typical day for a registrar is. It's obviously similar. A lot of the things, like majority of what radiologists do is usually reporting or doing procedures. But the main difference as a registrar is that you've got more of it's more heavily rostered, so you're kind of always in a specific area. You don't have to do all the reporting and all the procedures like you have to do when you're working as a consultant in private. So typically at a public hospital where you do your training as a registrar, you will usually start at 8:30 as well. Again, coffee, always start the day with coffee, gets you going. And then you'll be allocated usually to, at least at the hospital that I worked at, they used to split the day into two kind of reporting or procedural sessions. So the first session usually would go from 8:30 to 1, and you could be rostered to say MRI or outpatient CTs, or you could be rostered to ED where you report ED, X-ray, ultrasound, CT. Usually the MR was separate. That would be just left to the people allocated to MRI. Or you could be rostered to inpatients, etc., etc. So you'll be because there's usually up to 20 or so registrars in each department, so you'll get put onto one of those things in the morning. You could also be put onto the procedures, whether that's CT procedures or ultrasound procedures. And then those kind of sessions will vary throughout the week. So you'll get a half day of whatever in the morning, and then usually something different for the half day in the afternoon. And then the lunch break, so that's the first session goes to 1 o'clock, and then you get a lunch break. Lunch break is usually 1 hour, which is pretty good. I've also worked at other departments where it was 1.5 hours, which to most people will probably sound ridiculous, and it's pretty good. I cannot lie, it's quite good. A lot of the time then, because you have a lot of training requirements such as exams and all that kind of stuff, they'll usually, the large reason for the break being so long is that they fit in tutorials and stuff like that at lunchtime. So most of the time it will be, you spend a bit of time eating, and then usually one of the consultants will put on a tutorial, whether that's just like an ad hoc tutorial where they'll go through a specific topic, or whether it's, film viva examination practice where our final fellowship exams involve a lot of film reading. So the bosses kindly put away some time to show the candidates films and practice like it's a mock exam. So it's all very useful in the grand scheme of things and the process of preparing for those final examinations. So usually then the lunch break will finish at 2 o'clock, and that's when the second session starts. So the second reporting or procedure session, depending on where you're allocated. And that will usually go from 2 to 5. So your typical day will finish at 5 o'clock. But as you know, the hospital's running 24/7, and they require a radiology service 24/7 as well. So we have a lot of additional staggered shifts as a registrar, which you typically don't have in private practice as a consultant. So you usually have, because you have multiple registrars that covering the after hours roster, and the after hours roster is just covering predominantly the ED scans and then also inpatient stuff during the night. So we used to have a couple of staggered shifts as well. You'd have someone that kind of start mid-morning and work till about say 7 o'clock, and then you have another evening person that will start around 1 or 2, and then they'll work till about 10 or 11. And then my hospital used to have another person that would start around 4, and they would work till midnight. And then you've got a night registrar that also comes on, who will usually start around 9 o'clock and then work till 8:30 a.m. the next morning. So my hospital that I trained at was very, very busy, and that's why we had so many staggered shifts, because the volume of work coming in was just very, very high. So we need that much manpower just to kind of keep everything under control, and you know, the ED people don't want to be waiting like hours upon hours for reports to come out. And then, you know, that would overall kind of decrease patient care. So we didn't want that to happen. So we provided, you know, extra manpower and kept everything under control. So then those after hour shifts, and then obviously that includes weekend shifts as well. As I said, it's a 24/7 kind of operation and a service. And then the other thing that's kind of different and you get to get involved with in public hospitals as a training registrar is MDTs or multidisciplinary meetings. That's something else that you're involved in. They're usually, depending on how big your hospital is, the number of meetings varies. The hospital that I was training at, I think there were probably like 40 meetings per week or something, and then usually there'll be a radiologist or a radiology registrar that will take the meeting from the imaging point of view for everyone. So that would usually involve particularly senior registrars who would cover a lot of meetings. You could sometimes cover like, you know, 2, 3, 4 meetings per week as an extra thing, and that involves obviously meeting preparation to go through the cases so you can actually be of use in the meeting to the clinicians. So that adds on a bit of extra work as well. So that would be a typical day as a registrar. So you'd have your 2 reporting sessions, you have your lunch break with a possible tutorial, and then on top of that you might have either MDTs every now and again, and even if you're not allocated to the MDT, you could always attend as well if you're not rostered somewhere else, just to get a bit of extra learning and, you know, see what the other specialists and stuff, what they find valuable and what they want to know from their imaging reports, which is always useful. And then obviously on top of that, all the after hours stuff. So that's usually varied. You might get 1 or 2 after hours shifts per week. And then on top of that, every 3 months, you probably do a week of night shifts, or possibly 2. And that's about it, guys. So that's usually the typical days for a radiologist who's working in private or as a registrar in public. So I can assure you that the radiologists are usually working pretty hard, although sometimes they might be hard to track down. So guys, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions, please comment down below and I'll try and answer you, or if there's any other videos that you'd like to see, let me know, and I'll catch you in the next one.